Titanic mystery. On April 14, 1912, an incident took place that became a front-page story in newspapers all over the world. It is a tale that has continued to capture the attention of movie and theater goers, of opera and television audiences, of novelists and playwrights. It's the story of the allegedly impregnable Titanic, the unsinkable majestic ocean liner that tumbled to the bottom of the icy Atlantic waters with 1,600 passengers still aboard. How could such a toxic tragedy have occurred? Could it have been avoided? How could the naval patriarch, Captain Edward Smith, no neophyte he, have allowed the disaster to happen? What were the extenuating circumstances that led to the death of that glorious White Star Queen? In September 1985, the hulk of the Titanic was found on the ocean's floor, providing many answers to the questions that seamen and landlubbers had wrestled with over the years. What went wrong? Investigators found that a series of mistakes led to the sinking of the Titanic. A wireless message had come in from a French liner, warning of ice ahead, but that was 1,000 miles away, and so, no need to worry. On April 13, the vessel Raphanek also warned the Titanic of dangerous ice ahead. On the following day, there came a spate of other warnings from a Cunard ship, a Dutch liner, and the White Star Baltic, all telling of icebergs about 250 miles from the Titanic's current position. Next came the German America, echoing the same forebodings, followed by the California, cautioning the Titanic about the field ice. Finally, the Mesaba called attention to an enormous belt of ice stretching directly across the Titanic's path. All the messages emanating from sister ships should have had a profound effect on Smith and Company. No one miscreant could be fingered, but a host of crew members were certainly blameworthy. Why didn't Captain Smith's officers react to those messages? Notations were indeed made on slips of paper but largely ignored and forgotten. There was no standard protocol for the handling of such messages. If there had been, Captain Smith would certainly have taken a circuitous route so as to avoid the dangerous icebergs. Death knell for the Titanic. And then it happened. White in its innocence, a monstrous iceberg smashed into the luxury liner, ripping an ugly gash of 250 feet along the starboard and causing a fatal wound. Within seconds, thousands of cubic feet of water had penetrated the shattered hull. One after another, domino-like, the watertight compartments and bulkhead were flooded. The unthinkable had happened despite the absolute guarantees of the shipbuilders, Harland and Wolff. There followed a macabre scene as the ship's band, clad in their tuxedos, continued to play show tunes while hordes of terrified passengers, many in nightclothes, rushed toward the lifeboats. The crew called out, "Women and children first," but their lack of an orderly plan for loading would have profound ramifications. In fact, some boats that could hold 30 were sent into the Atlantic with only a handful of people, generally first-class passengers. As panic began to take hold, the realization that there weren't enough lifeboats exacerbated the situation, bringing out the worst in a rapacious few. Several insurgent males ignored the crew and jumped into descending lifeboats. It was an act of shame they would have to live with for the rest of their lives. The lawyer's turn. As one might have expected, manifold lawsuits against the White Star Line began to crop up within weeks of the sinking and rescue. The glut of billionaires on board, Astor's, Widener's, Guggenheim's, Strauss's, et al., did not file any claims, but other cases went all the way to the Supreme Court and kept lawyers and judges busy for the next 4 years. The average claim had been for a modest $1,500, and the average award, paid by the White Star Line, was a risible $1,000. White Star's top-notch legal staff was accused of using dilatory tactics, tiring the claimants until they agreed to settle for a mere pittance. Their lawyers called many claims specious and rejected them out of hand. The denouement of the story is rather sad. American and British maritime law had long given special protection to ship owners on the grounds that their business was such a risky one. And so there was a limit to the amount of money that White Star could be assessed. In the end, they paid only 4% of the $16 million originally demanded by the survivors and were happy to close the books on the ocean disaster. We can imagine that if a similar tragedy were to take place today, the settlement would be in the hundreds of millions.